The AMT. Welcome to Brian Lehrer Live. It's our last live show before summer reruns. We will be back for another Wednesday night season beginning 2 days after Labor Day. As for tonight, we will take stock of the mayoral race, including the state of several key constituencies, gays, Latinos, and Republicans, and we'll show you some samples of a new video art form, mixing old movies with new video, and we'll meet an artist who does it named DJ Spooky. But first, some thoughts about Brooklyn via Bombay. Suketu Mehta came to the United States from Bombay when he was 14. That was almost 30 years ago. And if you think New York can be a little much sometimes, wait till you hear what's in his book, Maximum City, about Bombay, a city with, believe it or not, 14 million people, 6 million more people than in New York. We'll also let Suketu play VJ a little bit. He's picked out one clip of video about Bombay he'd like us to see. He'll read a little bit too. But maybe you also saw Suketu Mehta's op-ed about Brooklyn in the New York Times City section this month about how Brooklyn has arrived, not just as a global capital, but a trendy, arty one. So we will talk about coming to love Brooklyn via Bombay from a writer who says he lives in cities by choice. Suketu Mehta is author of Maximum City, Bombay, Lost and Found. Welcome to Brian Lehrer Live.
Thanks, Brian, for having me on the show.
Nice to have you. You live in cities by choice. Why?
I am at two with nature, as Woody Allen says.
At two?
I was born in Calcutta, and then I grew up in Bombay and New York. I moved to Jackson Heights in Queens when I was 14. And I like the country well enough on weekends, but I wouldn't know what to do if I was put in the middle of Walden Pond. I like cities because I like people, and I write about cities, which now seem to be the place of choice for our species on the planet. The UN just had an interesting survey where they pointed out that for the first time in human history, more of us are living in cities than in villages. So we've become an urban species.
Funny enough, in America, more of us are now living in suburbs than cities. The suburban vote drives national elections because of that. And I know that you have two young children.
Yes.
And it's having two young children that drives New Yorkers to the suburbs quicker than anything else if they can afford it. So you're choosing to raise kids in the city.
Well, somebody once told me, you know, when you have the second child, you've got to be out of there. That's when you go to the suburbs and you find the good schools. Fortunately, my two sons go to an excellent school in Brooklyn, but I can understand why people with children might want to live in the suburbs, although I think that the city itself is an education. For my children, New York City is an education. They go around and they pick up survival skills that will really stand them well when they grow up. And it's more than just America. I mean, if we look at the world, the direction of our race on the planet is in these vast megacities. Bombay has 14 million people within the municipal limits of Bombay, but in Greater Bombay there's 20 million people. There's more people in the city of Bombay than on the continent of Australia.
It's quite a thing. And do you live in cities by choice? Give us a call. If you live in New York City by choice, why do you choose to live in the city? You see the number on your screen. Give us a call. We'll put a few of you on. I think we'll have some time for maybe a couple of phone calls on why you live in the city by choice. But yes, we're talking about your adopted city, New York, your adopted borough, Brooklyn. By the way, I'm also raising two kids in the city. And for me, it's not only the education that the city provides to them, which I think is wonderful, and the people contact and the isolation, the human isolation in the suburbs, but it's also selfish, because strolling a stroller with a child in the city is heaven. Having to cart that same child around in a car seat is hell.
Yes. Well, I had two children in the East Village. We were living there for a while, and strolling our strollers around there, we felt like Martians. But the East Village, too, is full of babies, and if you go around Brooklyn, I live in Park Slope, which is also called Stroller Central.
Yes.
What my children see is the experience of human diversity, of people from all over the planet who've come to live in New York City by choice. And if you chart the graph of New York, it looked like in the 1970s people were leaving New York in droves, that these cities were really the orphanages or almshouses of America. The cities have made a huge comeback. People who retire, who find empty nests, are finding apartments in the city. If you look at the real estate prices in Brooklyn, certainly that puts the lie to the theory that cities are somehow on the downswing.
So we're going to play a clip from a documentary about Bombay in a second. It's going to be a transportation-themed clip. You'll see men on a train mostly, and we'll show you that in a minute. But you want to set that up because you chose it, and I understand you're going to read something from your book first that also relates to transportation.
That's right. Well, the cover of my book is a picture by Sebastião Salgado of the trains of Bombay.
Let's see, why don't you hold that straight up toward the camera? There you go.
It's a wonderful picture, which actually I saw a poster of in the New York City subway, and it's about the commuter trains of Bombay, which carry about 6 million passengers a day. And when I went to Bombay to research my book, I found a lot of sadness. I found people were killing each other for religious reasons, and I spoke to people in the underworld. And the one image that gave me hope was, strangely enough, in the incredibly crowded commuter trains of Bombay. So I'll read a paragraph. If you are late for work in the morning in Bombay, and you reach the station just as the train is leaving the platform, you can run up to the packed compartments and find many hands stretching out to grab you on board, unfolding outward from the train like petals. As you run alongside the train, you will be picked up, and some tiny space will be made for your feet on the edge of the open doorway. The rest is up to you. You will probably have to hang on to the door frame with your fingertips, being careful not to lean out too far lest you get decapitated by a pole placed too close to the tracks. But consider what has happened. Your fellow passengers, already packed tighter than cattle are legally allowed to be, their shirts already drenched in sweat in the badly ventilated compartment, having stood like this for hours, retain an empathy for you, know that your boss might yell at you or cut your pay if you miss this train, and will make space where none exists to take one more person with them. And at the moment of contact, they do not know if the hand that is reaching for theirs belongs to a Hindu or Muslim or Christian or Brahmin or untouchable, or whether you were born in this city or arrived only this morning. All they know is that you're trying to get to the city of gold, and that's enough. Come on board, they say. We'll adjust.
I thought that's about the F train.
Yes, that too.
So, having said that, having read that, set up this clip.
So the clip is about a commuter train in Bombay, and I understand it's the section where they share food. So what happens in these hellishly crowded commuter trains is people travel in groups, and complete strangers will share their breakfasts. You know, there'll be people who will be playing cards together, there'll be people who will be selling things like underwear and vegetables. So in these crowded trains, what you see is cities of communities, and that's really the way cities like New York and Bombay function and manage to stay alive, because in the incredible anonymity of the big city, you can find community. So this clip is really about community in the trains of Bombay.
What's the title of the documentary?
I think it's called the Churchgate Fast, 8:32 Fast.
Right, so let's see what life looks like on the 8:32 a.m. train into Bombay.
दिवाळीच्या ह्याच्यात प्रत्येक जण एक काही ना काहीतरी घेऊन यायचा, मग एका दिवशी असंच मजा म्हणून कोणातरी चिडवण्यासाठी काहीतरी घेऊन येतो. काय चौधरी रात्रीचं सगळं तुमचं सकाळचं आमचं मसाला आहे पाहिलं मी 8 वाजता मला वाटते ऑपरेशन सक्सेसफुल पेशंट एक्सपायर होणार माझ्या बॅगेत टाका हे राम हे आनंद मिळालाच नाही माझ्या लक्षात करायला मीठ टाकले आता अरे बोलते हा प्रभू
Well, first of all, we saw men preparing food, so we know we're not in America.
That's right. And it makes me hungry.
And what was that?
So that's the classic Bombay street food. It's the Bombay pizza slice. It's called bhel puri, which is a mixture of puffed rice and noodles and potatoes and various sauces. It's really delicious.
So it looked really delicious. But you wrote in your book, Maximum City, Bombay Lost and Found, quote, Bombay is the future of urban civilization on the planet. God help us. How much were you kidding?
I wasn't really kidding. It's a dystopic future. Bombay is a city which is experiencing simultaneously a boom and a civic emergency. 60% of the city is homeless.
60, let's just stop and digest that.
60%.
60% of 14 million people are homeless?
Are officially homeless. That is, they live either on the sidewalks or in crude shacks. They're vast shanty towns. But Bombay is not unique in this. There's a group of cities in the developing world, such as Sao Paulo, Lagos, Jakarta, which are just like Bombay, which are marked by huge sprawling shanty towns, an uncontrolled flow of migrants from the countryside, and people who come there because cities for them symbolize hope. You see, what's happened with agriculture in the developing world is partly because of the subsidies that we give to agricultural conglomerates in the richer countries, it becomes economically impossible to farm in countries like India. So a young man with dreams in his head will look at the Bollywood movies and decide Bombay is where his future is. And he will get on the train and join the ranks of the homeless.
It's so sad. So conditions in Bombay, though, are not specifically Indian urban. They're really global urban.
The global urban part of this
global
group
third
of
world
megacities.
Urban, maybe.
Well, I hesitate to call it just the third world because
Yes.
the first world also exists in
Yes.
Bombay. I know people
Yes.
in Bombay who live better than people in New York. The first and the third worlds now aren't geographically intact entities. Parts of Harlem have a higher infant mortality rate than Bangladesh. So it depends where you go in Bombay, what section of Bombay that you see. And I looked in my book at Bombay high and low, although more low because low is always more interesting than high.
Bombay is now known, I think, officially as Mumbai.
Yes.
Why didn't you say Maximum City, Mumbai Lost and Found?
In 1995, a chauvinist Hindu government decided to rename the city of Bombay to Mumbai, which it considers the authentic Hindu name. Now, I'm a Gujarati Indian, and growing up, I always called it Mumbai when speaking in Gujarati and Bombay when speaking in English. It was the British and the Portuguese that really created the city of Bombay, and in my opinion, it's to them that the baptismal rites should go. It never was an issue until the Shiv Sena government came along. We called it Mumbai when speaking in Indian languages, or Bombay, and we called it Bombay in English. The official name was Bombay, and it stood us pretty well. Besides, it's a very well-established brand now. You've got the Bombay Company, Bombay Gin, etc. So I think it's a lovely musical name.
So Bombay, 14 million people. Brooklyn, 2.5 million people.
Right.
as you wrote in your op-ed piece about Brooklyn in the New York Times City section the other week. Brooklyn has 2.5 million people, and nearly 1 million of them are immigrants, probably from 100 different countries. It's a remarkable human experiment, probably unprecedented, except for Queens.
Except for Queens and Toronto and Sydney. I spoke to the New York City Planning Department, and they reluctantly admitted that Toronto and Sydney are almost as multicultural as New York. But that's the other pattern of cities in the developed countries, if you will, in the richer countries. Cities like Toronto, Sydney, New York, which have successfully managed huge inflows of immigration and where people live together without really killing each other. There are other cities, especially in Europe. Amsterdam, for example, is really grappling with what to do with immigration and with how to accommodate Islamic immigrants, African immigrants. But cities like New York really seem to have managed it. And I've grown up here. I've been here since I was 14.
Yes.
So there's something there. It's a good news story. After 9/11, for example, there were no massive riots or pogroms against Arabs in New York. Sikhs were killed in other parts of America because they were mistaken for being Arabs. Large numbers of Muslims were deported by the federal government. But as far as the citizens of New York were concerned, there really was no significant backlash against Muslims or Arabs.
In fact, when we went to war against Afghanistan in the months after 9/11, on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, there's an Afghan restaurant. And I went in there one day and I asked, "How are you? Is it okay?" And the manager said, "Oh, people have been so good to us. Everybody's coming in and asking how we're doing. Nobody's coming in and saying, you know, Taliban go home," or something like that.
Right. Exactly. I found the same thing in Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn, where there are a number of Arab restaurants. And I found that in the days after 9/11, business actually boomed in these restaurants because of New Yorkers eager to prove that they held nothing against the Arabs in their midst. This, again, I want to emphasize, is a different story. There were some 20,000 Muslims which were deported. If you look at the Pakistani community in places like Kensington in Brooklyn, you'll find that every family has a horror story of being badly treated by the authorities. So it's a complex story, but overall, cities like New York show us really how the world can live together and not kill each other.
You've written that you live in Park Slope because you're a writer. It's in your union contract. That's funny. But we asked you to name another Brooklyn writer who inspires you, and you chose Walt Whitman,
Yes.
whose Leaves of Grass classic work is celebrating its 150th anniversary. So we're going to put up a short paragraph from Leaves of Grass, and Suketu is going to read it for us, his interpretation of a little bit of Walt Whitman. So let's take a look at that on the screen right now.
Crowds of men and women attired in the usual costumes, how curious you are to me. On the ferry boats, the hundreds and hundreds that cross, returning home, are more curious to me than you suppose. And you that shall cross from shore to shore years hence are more to me and more in my meditations than you might suppose.
Very nice. A little bit of the Crossing Brooklyn Ferry section of Leaves of Grass. We're almost out of time, Suketu. I love your book. People should read Maximum City, Bombay Lost and Found, which also says a thing or two about New York in context of you, as well as the op-ed piece in the New York Times City section from a few Sundays ago. Before you go, just tell us one thing. With your feet having been in these two worlds as much as they have been, what do you think Americans can't see about ourselves, because it's just so central to who we are? Anything come to mind?
What Americans cannot see about ourselves?
Yes.
Well, what I've always thought is that the antidote to America is in America itself. When the rest of the world looks at America, which often it doesn't like, what it forgets is that within America there are resistance movements. There are people who are thinking seriously about the condition of the country, like Walt Whitman did, like the New England Transcendentalists did, which somehow is lost in the huge hubbub that mass commercial America spreads to the rest of the world. And we should remember what made us, and I count myself, I'm an American citizen, what made us the envy and the hope of the world. And it's something which I think we should all read, Crossing Brooklyn Ferry, because we will come back to that which is best about America.
Well, we've crossed Brooklyn Ferry with Suketu and Walt Whitman from about 150 years ago. We've crossed into Bombay on the 832. So transportation is in the air in cities.
Mass
everywhere.
transit.
That's right, mass transit, eternal theme. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian.
Well, still to come, he wants gay rights supporters and Karl Rove supporters. Can Mayor Bloomberg have it both ways? And we'll meet DJ Spooky, an artist who mixes old movies with new video. This is Brian Lehrer Live.
There's something about you, baby. I can't get enough. There's something about you, baby. I got you looking at me, I'm gonna call you bluff. There's something about you.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. It takes a man to be a dad.
To the morning light.
When it comes to continuing education, all stops lead to CUNY. More than 200,000 New Yorkers of all ages in all 5 boroughs are enrolled in CUNY adult education courses. If you're looking for new job skills to enhance your career, start a new career, or if you want to enjoy a class in the arts, sciences, and humanities, then get on the train and come to one of CUNY's 19 campuses. CUNY continuing and professional education programs offer you more opportunities than any other learning institution in New York City. CUNY gives you high-quality instruction at low cost with schedules to meet your busy lifestyle. For more information, call 1-866-344-CUNY or log on to www.cuny.edu/continuinged. Hurry up, don't miss your stop, come to CUNY.
This is Brian Lehrer Live. It's our last live show before summer reruns, which are well worth watching again, by the way. We will be back for another Wednesday night season live beginning 2 days after Labor Day. Right now, Mayor Bloomberg wants gay rights supporters to love him, and he wants Karl Rove supporters to love him. Can he have it both ways? Can he make African Americans in Harlem feel his love, Latinos in Jackson Heights, and Italians in Bensonhurst? At $1 million a week of slick campaign ads, who knows? So we will take stock of the mayor's race right now with Gerson Borrero, columnist for El Diario La Prensa, and Doug Muzzio, Baruch College political analyst and host of City Talk right here on CUNY TV. Hello, Doug.
Evening.
You switched seats for this?
Yes.
From the host chair to the guest
I'd rather
chair.
be here than there.
And Gerson, great
you
to
doing?
see you, always.
Buenas noches. Good to be here.
So we're going to talk about these various themes and show some clips of different constituencies in a minute, from Freddie Ferrer to Karl Rove and who they represent. But first, I'm looking at these poll numbers on the front page of the New York Times. I want to put them right up on the screen. And they're almost unbelievable. The mayor suffers this stunning defeat on the West Side Stadium. And what happens? Lo and behold, he leaps to record approval rating. So what we're looking at now is a timeline. Approve, disapprove. You see how he started in June of '02, about, 6 months into his mayoralty, 45% approval rating. He went all the way down to 24% a year later. That's summer of '03. Now it's summer of '05, and he's up to 50%. His disapproval is down to 35%. Doug Muzzio, what do you make of it?
They're smiling. Bill Cunningham loves it. Several things are happening here. Number one, he took the pain early. He took his tax increase. He got the money. That's what's generating the surplus. So he took the pain early. And he has more pirouettes than Baryshnikov. He's able to turn 360, 180. He'll do any kind of a turn. And nothing sticks to him. So it's more and more favorable as the economy gets better, etc.
Let's see. Did we have that? Can we show that slide about? Okay. The we're gonna see another thing from the poll. Okay, not that one. Yeah, the this is going to show us how Mayor Bloomberg's campaign commercials are affecting voters' perceptions of him. And you've probably seen him. He's got Rudy Giuliani. He's got smiling public school parents. And here's a little bit of that in numerical form from the Times poll. Change in voter opinion after watching Bloomberg campaign commercials. More favorable opinion, 17%. Less favorable opinion, 10%. So he's got a net plus, Gerson. And another number there was how many people have seen them. And I think it was something like half the city has seen a Mayor Bloomberg campaign commercial already.
Well, he has spent $15 million out of his own pocket. We got to grant that. But when New Yorkers realize that he's out to buy them again, he bought them the first time, got away with it, because it was the circumstances of 9/11. I know Doug is trying to jump on this, but he bought them with, at that point, some estimate at $74 million. I think that he'll spend over $100 million. When New Yorkers realize that they are going to be bought on the marketplace of the electoral politic body, that they think it's democratic, then I think it's going to be a problem. And it's going to catch up with him. He started out so early. He started out so strong. I take you back to some of the polls. Last time I checked, we run elections on elections day, not on polls.
Yes.
And polls tended to have, I think 2 years prior to this, there were at least 15 polls, 12, 15, that actually had Fernando Ferrer beating Mayor Bloomberg.
Right.
All of a sudden, he wins 2, 3, 4, 5. You can even match it up. And all of a sudden, the race is over. It's very interesting how the media in this city, all of a sudden, a billionaire mayor who has really screwed up on a lot of things, all of a sudden
ready to declare it.
Oh, yeah.
Not just,
and the media has culpability.
You're saying not just to lead, but ready to declare it over.
Oh, yes,
and
it's
lay
over.
down
Forget the democracy, forget the election. Stay home. It's already Mayor Bloomberg
not
reelected.
cover the race. Do you see that in the media?
Come on,
I
Doug.
see a sense that this is over and the trend line is going against the Democrats. I think that if you look at this objectively, Bloomberg is in extraordinarily good position. You're right. He's spending $100 million of his own money, and with this budget deal, he's spending public money to help purchase this election. I'm not going to deny that. I don't think it's going to resonate with the voters that he's buying the election. You can't beat somebody with nobody, and the Democrats haven't shown. They're outspent, I understand it, but there's no coherent message with the Dems. And the guy's Teflon.
Well, I've got my own theory about this,
okay, go
which
ahead.
is that people actually, even if they realize that the mayor's spending $1 gazillion to buy their vote, we live in the capitalist center of the universe. People don't care. They maybe even respect it because he's a self-made billionaire.
Well, okay, self-made billionaire, but when you start tapping into the public funds, and I'll give you an example, what he tried to pull on the West Side Stadium deal, that was unconscionable, and we almost let him get away with $2.2 billion of public monies. Okay, that's what it was going to cost.
But right after that defeat, his approval went up.
Excellent. And you go to Queens with the Mets Stadium. You know that they still don't have a memo of understanding or letter of agreement on the Mets deal, and yet they announced it as this big, and his polls numbers went up. You don't have the stadium at Yankee Stadium, the Bronx Bombers, my team. And what happens? No MOU signed, a letter of agreement. Then you have the Bronx Terminal deal. I say those are Achilles' heels for the mayor, and when voters realize what he's giving away of our money, then he's going to be in for trouble. He can give away all his money if he wants to. He can give away $5 billion, and he won't be broke.
I have my own theory on why his poll numbers went up after the stadium debacle, too. Doug, tell me what you think of this. Which is,
I was going to agree with you.
People saw, well, first of all, a lot of people supported it. At least a lot of city council supported it, a majority. It was seen as a jobs creation program in large segments of minority communities. Al Sharpton was vocally for it. Plus, people saw a passion in Michael Bloomberg about this issue. And it's been his lack of passion that's accounted to some degree for his inability to connect with people. So it was something that was, relatively popular. Plus, they saw that he cared. They probably saw it as progress more than a boondoggle. What do you think?
I think you're right. I think he benefited from the issue. He got, he was the ancient mariner. He had the albatross around his neck. Shelley Silver did him a big favor. And he did this, Baryshnikov pirouette. Queens, which was a hellhole, inferior. You can't build a stadium. Awful. He turns 180 degrees. If you don't have fixed position and you don't have a vision, you can keep switching. He was expedient. That's good in a politician, that he sees a changing opportunity and reacts to it. Now, you can call him a flip-flopper and an opportunist, but there's a positive to that.
Well, it's really shameful that at this point we're looking at $50 million influencing the minds and the media buying this up and television stations making money and radio stations making money, and they want him to spend $100 million at least. But the point here is that when people focus in on his policies, what he's really done as the education mayor, and it's really examined, then I think there's going to be problems. Also, you seem to be referring to these, you know, pirouettes as a ballerina. I see Mighty Mouse, you know, maybe he's trying to be Mighty Mouse, Mickey Mouse at least. And I don't see this greatness about this man as a politician. This is a man who has, by all estimates, $5 billion of personal capital that he earned. And where's this greatness about his numbers? And when he's denying police officers, they had to take him to arbitration, binding arbitration, denying police officers the right to be able to earn as anybody else. He's denying teachers, the UFT, a contract that is decent and respectful of their profession. The people that are teaching our children, they're going to focus in on this. The fire department, our heroes of 9/11, what the hell has he done for them? He's put them under the stake. He would strike a match.
Look at the poll number.
That's what's going to happen to him.
I know who you're not voting for.
No, it doesn't matter. Hey, I voted. You know who I voted for in November 2004? For Ralph Nader. How's that?
In the same New York Times poll, his numbers on education were, I think, pretty good for him. There was, I forget the exact number, I think it was about 35%, 35% saw education as better under the mayor. A lot saw it the same. Hardly anybody saw it as worse. So that's probably a net positive for him on one of his big issues. I want to go through...
It's his show. Let him ask the questions, please.
Some of the constituencies in this race. That's very nice of you, by the way. And show some clips. And let's start with the mayor at the Gay Pride Parade last weekend.
The Gay Pride Parade is a chance for lots of New Yorkers to express themselves and lots of people on the sideline to have fun. It's a wonderful parade and it's great weather.
Gay Pride, not controversial in New York City?
No, it's not, and I think that the mayor is heartfelt in this. I think that he is a liberal Democrat and he believes in, you know, gay rights and deep down gay marriage. But I mean, as a public official and a Republican, he's got to take a different stand.
He couldn't even admit to a reporter's question, would he be gay for a day? He couldn't even say that. He has said he's Puerto Rican for a day. It was in the New York Times. Did you read the article? He couldn't say, I'm gay for a day. He's a hypocrite on the issue.
Is there a gay vote, per se, that can swing?
I think there is New Yorkers who are concerned about different issues, and definitely within the gay community, there are people then seeing that he's just a phony, that he's playing them whatever side that he can, and that's the problem. You can't really pin him down on things.
Is there a Republican primary issue here? You know, Tom Agnabeni, who's running against him in the Republican primary, is running to some degree on gay marriage, against gay marriage, and saying, look, this, you know, liberal, hedonist, whatever he's calling him, heathen, I don't know, pagan mayor is running, he believes in gay marriage.
If Tom can get on the ballot, he could really pose a problem because the mayor would then have to focus in on him. And if Tom then gets a conservative nomination and runs in a general in a close race, Agnabeni could have an impact. But I don't think it's close. I'm sorry.
You're talking about a third-party candidacy.
Well, I'm
for
saying
a social conservative.
That's right. I mean, he could have the line. I mean, if Mike Long gives Tom the line, he's got the line. In a close election, you could have enough Republican defectors to make a difference. But I don't think it's going to be that close. If things continue as they are, which they almost never will.
Well, I think that Tom Agnabeni is a true Republican. The mayor is an opportunist who was a Democrat who switched because he wanted power so much that he switched from being a Democrat to a Republican. That tells you something about a person's character. So Tom Agnabeni, by the way, the other day I saw him, he told me last Friday, he actually told me that he had some workers to collect signatures. He paid them $10. They came back to him and said, sorry, Tom. I said, what's wrong? What happened? Says, the mayor's giving me 20.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah.
So he's buying people off.
Right,
oh, he's sucking the air out of it. He's hiring.
Every time he opens his mouth, it's money.
We'll see if Agnabeni can get on the ballot.
Hope he
with
does.
all the money the mayor is spending on people to go out there and get the petition signatures before Agnabeni can.
Right.
Another constituency, Latino New Yorkers. Let's see what Fernando Ferrer has to say about that issue.
Do me a favor. When you run against any of these men and women, tell them that the Spanish classes are great. But if they really want to earn the trust and votes of our people, they can help us by improving our schools.
Freddie Ferrer last weekend in Puerto Rico, by the way. Latino vote?
I think it's going to make a difference. He had 28% of the Latino vote in the last primary. That is the correct figure. I think he's going to go up to at least 32. If he reaches 35, the nomination is his.
We're talking about Freddie Ferrer only
during the Democratic primary.
During the Democratic primary in 2001.
He received 28% of the Latino vote. That was
no,
double.
he got 72% of the Latino
No.
vote.
The 28% was increased. The turnout.
Okay. You're talking about the increase.
Oh, that's a turnout.
A turnout increase.
So do you think there'll be a big turnout?
I think it'll be bigger than the 28%. If he hits a 32%, it's already very comfortable. If it goes to 35, turnout. All the Latino eligible voters during the Democratic primary, he wins the primary first round. The primary.
How about the general election?
The general election is too tough to call.
Assuming he's the nominee for the moment.
He's gonna. I think they're gonna focus. Democrats are gonna rally around Freddie, and if he wins it, if he wins it in a strong, if there is a runoff, which I don't believe there is going to be, it's gonna be tough. But I think he has a chance at it.
One thing about Freddie Ferrer, you said to me, and I think Juan Gonzalez wrote it in his column in the Daily News. I know you said it. I don't know if you've written it. That the Diallo flip-flop was not a flip-flop, that this was Ferrer's consistent position all the way along. Is that what you believe?
I realized that after I wrote a column in which I said he's going to pay for this shot on the Diallo case, and I hit him just like as hard as anybody, like I've hit Freddie in other columns before. But you know what? When I stepped back and really analyzed it, when I saw it, that even today's New York Times, they keep sneaking in the whole Amadou Diallo thing. It's unbelievable. Look, you know, with Fulani, nobody mentions it with Bloomberg. Okay, and the whole problem, he had the anti-Semitism on the part of Lenora. But with Freddie, it's always Amadou Diallo, so they keep sneaking in it.
But it comes up with Lenora Fulani, but Bloomberg didn't.
It's constant
Bloomberg
with Freddie.
is. But wait, when Ferrer said to the Police Sergeants Association that the cops were over-indicted and it was not a crime in the Diallo case, is that consistent with what he was saying back at the time?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't, but he did, in fact, and I know he's dilly-dallied around this, and I don't know why. At one point I told Freddie, I said, why don't you just say what you thought? I don't have a problem with a person changing his opinion or opining different than I do, but just don't swim all over the place, which is, I think, the problem. But Freddie has, when New Yorkers that know him, and those that will get to know him, he is not a radical, he's not a progressive, he's not a leftist. Freddie is very middle of the road, Democrat, traditional Democrat, clubhouse kind of politician.
Another constituency. We mentioned Republicans. How about this Republican by the name of Karl Rove?
Nice fella.
Conservatives saw the savagery of 9/11 and the attacks and prepared for war. Liberals saw the savagery of the 9/11 attacks and wanted to prepare indictments and offer therapy and understanding to our attackers.
So, Doug Muzzio, that put Mayor Bloomberg in a nice little uncomfortable position.
Absolutely. Well, he's been running from the Republicans since he was elected the first time during the Republican convention. He hid.
Yeah, that's how much he ran.
And any photo op with the president, he runs away. Karl Rove is the antithesis of what Mike Bloomberg wants and what the Democrats have to paint Mike Bloomberg as. So they've got to say, Mike Bloomberg's a Republican. He may tell you that he's, I'm not really a Republican, but he supports the Republican Party. He gives them money and support.
In fact, here is Freddie Ferrer from this show a couple of weeks ago on that very issue.
Well, Brian, I find it odd that these extraordinarily generous Democratic donors have apparently overlooked the fact that this mayor has generously funded some of the most conservative, right-wing, reactionary Republicans whose policies have hurt women, have hurt this city, have hurt public education. He's going to have to explain it to them, I suppose.
Freddie Ferrer here last week. Can he make that stick in a general election campaign?
Well, I'm sure he's going to make it as, a campaign, the core of a campaign, because he's got to say this guy doesn't represent us. He's not us. He's a Republican. I don't know if it sticks because Bloomberg has been very successful in winking every time he uses the word Republican. He's a rhino. He's a Republican in name only.
Rhino.
And everybody knows it.
Well, Republican in name only.
That's right. Well, forget about the Republican label. Just label him an opportunist, and people will understand that. That's what he's been. That's what he's done. Democrat switches to the Republican Party so he can get elected mayor. In my book, un oportunista, an opportunist.
Real quick, Doug, is Freddie Ferrer now the presumptive nominee of the Democratic Party?
He's got to get past 40 because if he's in a runoff, you know what can happen with a runoff. A Virginia Fields Freddie runoff could be real damaging with two core constituencies at one another again.
Well, all it takes is for 7 or 8 points for either Gifford Miller or Anthony Weiner to go up in the polls, maybe 9 points, and they'll be the contender according to this theory.
Possible.
Because Virginia's not that strong.
It's early.
I wouldn't label it, a
agree.
foolhardy candidacy, but Virginia's not a tough candidate.
I have a feeling you and I are going to be talking about this once or twice more between now and November.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you both very much. Up next, we will meet DJ Spooky, an artist who mixes old movies with new video. This is Brian Lehrer Live.
I had a heart attack when I was 48.
You'll be okay.
I survived, but I'll always be at risk for another.
What do you got? I think she's having a heart attack.
Let's get and my heart may never be the same.
2, 3.
Heart disease is the #1 killer of women.
Now I'm taking steps to lower my risk. But I wish I'd done it earlier, for myself and for my family.
The Heart Truth starts with you. Find out your risk and take action to lower it.
Prominent professors, outstanding students, illustrious alumni, all on the Emmy-nominated magazine show about CUNY. Hi, I'm Diana Ravinka. Join us every week as we bring you stories about the people and programs that make CUNY a place where you study with the best.
This is Brian Lehrer Live. It's our last live show before summer reruns. Thank you for watching. We will be back for another Wednesday night season beginning 2 days after Labor Day. And now, the power of sampling and the Supreme Court's blow to file swappers. DJ Spooky is a conceptual artist based in New York. When he's not releasing albums or spinning other people's music, he's remixing films. His latest project is an artistic rendering of the 1915 silent film classic, Birth of a Nation, which was controversial for its glorification of the Ku Klux Klan, although a cinema milestone. We will see a sample of that in a few minutes, but first, let's watch another sample of DJ Spooky's art. This is from the video for his song, Peace in Zaire. First time I think we've ever showed an exploding reel-to-reel deck on CUNY TV. DJ Spooky, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
What did that have to do with peace in Zaire?
Well, the funny thing about Zaire is, of course, it doesn't exist anymore. It's a false country. It's a construct. And I named that track after this sort of sense of what happens when you have colonial imposition and when people play with borders. Of course, Congo and Zaire were both different kinds of erasures of one another. So when that video was started, I was thinking about what would happen if you recorded an entire country and then all of a sudden those recordings vanished. Like, say, for example, the Soviet Union. Just, you know, it vanished when I was 17 or 18. You wake up one morning and a whole country's gone, you know. So that was a bit of a pun. And further into the video, you get more into this idea of Zaire in New York and sort of Africa and New York and stuff like that.
And I should mention that your real name is Paul Miller. Mm-hmm. You go by DJ Spooky, That Subliminal Kid. Do I have that right?
Yeah, the Subliminal Kid name is a sampling from one of my favorite beat writers, William S. Burroughs. He had a book called Nova Express, where the earth is inundated with recordings and people are being programmed by media and recording their entire lives, and the Subliminal Kid is a character who cuts the tape loops. So I've sampled it because the early beats, to me at least, are, if you look at Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, their relationship to our beats, DJing, hip-hop and techno and ambient, is a kind of a pun on language. So the Subliminal Kid sample from that, and Spooky is, of course, what happens when you press music and there's nobody there.
Ah, Spooky. And Paul D. Miller, a.k.a. DJ Spooky, that Subliminal Kid, that's all on this book cover. Is also the author of this book, Rhythm Science, published last year by the MIT Press, with a CD that's about to fall out. So it's a book you can read and listen to, right?
Absolutely.
And watch. Is it a DVD or a CD?
CD at the moment. My next book's going to have a DVD.
Okay.
So.
And we're going to show part of his Rebirth of a Nation. Anybody who's ever taken a film class knows about D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation, and we're going to show DJ Spooky's remix of some of that in a minute. But I want to ask you about the news this week that really pertains to your art from the Supreme Court, the Grokster and Streamcast case, file sharing, file share website creators can be sued if the plaintiffs believe that they're creating their sites in order to thwart the copyright laws. And let me play you a clip, because the record and movie industries say artists' livelihoods, after all, are at stake here. So let's look at a clip from a lawyer who represented the industry in the Grokster case, Don Verrilli, speaking on the PBS NewsHour earlier this week.
Downloading of songs and movies from services like Grokster, Morpheus, Streamcast, Kazaa is illegal and wrong, plain and simple. Justice Breyer, in his concurring opinion, described it as garden variety theft.
So the Supreme Court ruled unanimously that if it's ruled that the websites are promoting infringement of copyright, then they can be libeled. For yourself, who creates songs, creates original videos, in addition to your remixing work, do you not feel threatened by other people taking your material and swapping it around without paying you?
I'm a big fan of what I like to call the 50 Cent versus the Grateful Dead model. 50 Cent, of course, as most of you know, is an amazingly huge hip-hop star, but he rose to fame on the fact that he gave away his voice on mixtapes. And mixtapes are a part of the way hip-hop spreads right now. Record labels will even vie to have the hottest tracks put on the most independent DJs' mixes because it helps build street credibility and brand recognition of their artists. What happens with him is that he spread his name throughout the scene in the underground, and Eminem heard it, and a whole bunch of people heard it. Anybody who was keeping track of stuff, you started hearing this guy on every mix. And so that's how he got signed. On the other hand, the Grateful Dead was a group that actually encouraged people to make recordings of their concerts. They would set up a whole area so people could get even better quality recordings, and would have microphones set up, and nobody was ever prosecuted or anything. In fact, they gave away the concerts. So both of those two artists, the Grateful Dead, 50 Cent, come from radically different environments. One is sort of the 60s hippie scene, the other is urban, gangster rap. But they both are linked by this fact of sharing, and they both, by giving away music, it didn't, take away from their livelihood. In fact, it increased things. In fact, Grateful Dead concert bootlegs are fine, and their concerts are fine, and their records are going great still. Same with 50 Cent.
And despite the Supreme Court ruling, I think file sharing in one form or another is not going away anytime soon. So
no.
Tell me if you disagree. But do you then, as an artist, have to come up with a kind of new sort of business model for your work from anything that may have come previously?
Well, what we're going to start seeing, I think, with this ruling is a vast difference between the way the law is written versus the way the law is lived. And what's going to happen is that people are essentially going to have a huge gap between the two. And any server that's, in the Cayman Islands or in these small, the Republic of Tuvalu or whatever, where you don't need to be physically in the United States to have a file. You can download it from wherever, it doesn't matter. Of course, you can look at models like MIT, which recently put its entire archive online, and it hasn't destroyed MIT. In fact, they seem to be doing fine. I just think it's going to make the notion of copying and file sharing become much more nebulous and uncertain. And eventually, they're looking at using the law as like a neo-medieval club, you know, just smashing you over the head. But guess what? It's a club hitting a cloud. You can't really stop it.
You're a music DJ, but you're also now getting into this art known as video remix. So again, before we show this Birth of a Nation to Rebirth of a Nation remix, explain to our viewers a little bit the art form itself.
Well, okay, in the 20th century, I have to keep thinking about that the old, ancient 20th century. We had this thing called film, right? You know, somebody had to stand there and kind of crank away. And eventually it was put onto a celluloid kind of reel, you know, and somebody would show up and play that at a theater. You know, you'd have to put it on a thing, and it would spin.
And every once in a while it would explode like that reel-to-reel machine you had.
Yeah, or burn, you know, because of the heat of the light bulb.
That's right.
For us, with the digital era, most of that has now become kind of manipulation of data. And my film, Birth of a Nation, was one of the first American epics to really put the idea of multiple stories going simultaneously on the map. In fact, it was the first film to play at the White House, and it was also happened to be a Ku Klux Klan propaganda film. President Wilson was a big fan. I'm sure Bush is probably too. But you know, the whole situation was
It's not fair, people will say, but go ahead.
No, the red states, blue states, you know, this is still going on. So it's a film that shows the shattering of the Confederacy and, you know, these, you know, malevolent Negroes taking over the South, you know, and changing, you know, and driving these poor oppressed whites out.
It's amazing because, as I said earlier, anybody who's ever taken a film course, right, film history, movie history 101, you're going to learn about Birth of a Nation as a cinematic milestone. And yet, it's, you know, it's got this racist content.
Yeah, it's crazy racist, straight up. You know, it's like, you know, the idea of black Sambos, the idea of the black maid, all of that was carved in stone with this film. And in fact, it took years for black actors to, you know, recover from the roles they've been put in by the film.
So just, again, tell our viewers what to look for in this, because a lot of people have not seen Birth of a Nation, the original. So what's Birth of a Nation, and what's your new material and what people are about to see?
All right. Y'all, let's take it like this. All right, 1915, D.W. Griffiths, very famous filmmaker, makes this film. And it's the first, even the term blockbuster came out because the lines were around the block to see it. It was controversial. It had a basic plot that essentially after the Civil War, blacks rose up to take office and power in the South, and the whites were driven from power and put into poverty by these, you know, aggressive black people, right? Meanwhile, what happens is that he says that the Ku Klux Klan had to come in as a terrorist organization and assassinate many public officials and lynchings and all this kind of stuff to reestablish order. So it's a film that's an epic of the Old South, written in the blood, literally, of the memory of these kinds of conflicts. So the film was incredibly popular. It's the first film to gross back then, which was a huge deal, $1 million, you know. And it was also the first film to draw its own protest movement, which was the NAACP. People would picket it in front of it and also would have all sorts of different reactions. In fact, a lot of early black cinema responded to the film, and people created segregated film studios, you know, stuff like that, just to be able to make films that showed blacks in a positive light.
So we're going to show two clips. Let's show this first one right now, 30 seconds of Rebirth of a Nation by DJ Spooky. Wow. So your stuff in there was A, the music track, and B, everything that was in white?
Yeah, well, what you can do is these days seamlessly edit together scenes. And what you were seeing was several scenes layered, and I'd taken the Klansmen from one or two contexts and remixed them back into the scene, but it looked as if everything was exactly the same. So when I'm remixing the film, it's seamless. You can't really tell the original from the remix. And that's the point. It's meant to be completely seamless.
And in other parts of the film, you're even more explicit in mixing two video sources into one. So let's look at another clip. And this includes new material of dancers by doing material from the choreographer Bill T. Jones. Check it out. long is the whole Rebirth of a Nation?
It's an hour long. And you have to remember the first film was 3 hours long. And in fact, little sort of historical resonances of sampling. The funny thing is Griffiths was a huge fan of Wagner. And the Klansmen, when they're riding, the theme of them is the Flight of the Valkyrie. And that influenced Francis Ford Coppola, for example, with the famous scene from Apocalypse Now, when the helicopters fly over the Vietnamese villages and they're bombing and strafing, and the helicopters come in with the Wagner kind of, you know, dun 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 dun. You know?
Yeah.
So there's been a century of quotation between different films and genres, and what I'm doing is applying DJ technique to cinema. The choreography of what you were seeing there and the kind of blurriness alternates with very clear scenes, and so what I'm trying to do is highlight and focus on the more sort of powerful points in the film. And that's when the blacks were turning away the white voters and they were putting in their ballots, and they were like, nope.
We just have about 15 seconds for a clip answer, but a short answer. But you've said that we're now living in an era of sampled culture. What do you mean by that?
Well, in my book, what I'm trying to figure out is the idea here of many cultures existing in a simultaneous situation. You know, everybody is accessible to certain kinds of information. And sampling plays with memory. You know, you hear a record, you hear a film clip, and you know that. At this point, I've grown up with so many records around me, and you can look at all sorts of things. Say, for example, the early days of hip-hop with Grandmaster Flash playing a lot of disco tracks. Sampling, whether you're in India, New York, you name it, it's now become a global vocabulary because people have grown up with these records.
So let's go out with another of DJ Spooky's music videos. This is Ibid de Marche Ibid by Madeline Leskin. It's your music, her video, right?
Well, it's a video for my, normal video. Like,
right.
That's my song, and it's the video for the song.
All right, thanks a lot, and let's take one more look at your work. And that's it for tonight's Brian Lehrer Live. And for our first season, we hope you've enjoyed the mix of life, art, and politics we've tried to present. And we want to know what you think about this show, so email your polite comments, your angry rants, and your useful suggestions to brian@cuny.tv, not .com, not .org, brian@cuny.tv. And most of all, we hope you'll join us again when we begin another live Wednesday night season, beginning September 7th, 2 days after Labor Day. In the meantime, remember to check out my daily radio show on WNYC, New York Public Radio. That's every weekday morning at 10 on FM 93.9 and AM 820 WNYC. Tomorrow's guests will include Paul Krugman. Thanks to our great CUNY TV crew, and have a great summer.